So I thought I'd start today's podcast with just an update from the Board of Pardons. There have been a lot of changes going on. One of the things I'm getting ready for in the new year is the fact that the Board of Pardons on January 9th is releasing their own File Your Own Pardon online website, which is a huge technological change. What it means is that at some point in the future, they anticipate pardons being filed on their portal without paper documentation. So just by way of background, for over 10-15 years, I've been completing pardon applications with the court documents that are required and sending it and tracking it, and also sending a copy to the client. And apparently, or even allegedly, as of January 9th, the pardon applications are going to be filed directly online by either the applicant or their representative. So an attorney or an assistant or a friend or a pastor, somebody who helps the applicant fill out their application is called a representative. And I'm looking forward to being able to make sure that all of my previously filed pardons are on the platform, as well as seeing as how easy does the platform make it for me to file pardons for people that want help and for people to file their own. So we're getting ready for that change. As a result of that, and through the course of reviewing numerous stories from people and answering telephone calls and questions every day, a couple of things have become apparent. And I want to answer those questions and get the content out there to consume so that people can find out even more and more about the pardon process. I have been surprised at how much people like these podcasts, and there's no doubt that people enjoy it. I hope they're informative, and in fact, people occasionally are calling me while they're looking at the podcast, and I think they're surprised that I answer. But a bunch of questions come up, and those questions need to be answered both in content as well as on the website. So one of the things I'm going to do is ask those questions and then answer them today. They should be relatively brief answers, but let's get started. So let's review the question of cost, and what does it cost for PA Pardon Services to prepare, file, and track a pardon application? The answer to that is straightforward because we have transparent pricing. We charge a flat rate of $1,850 to do everything involved in the pardon process. What that includes is we write off to the county's clerk of court's office in order to request the specific court documents that the pardon board wants to have with your pardon application. Previously, we've been photocopying those documents and attaching them to the paper application. In the future, those documents will need to be scanned and uploaded to the pardon process or to the pardon portal. Part of the pardon is answering the questions to why the crime occurred. If you're using my services, I work through your answers to explaining the crime and how it occurred, trying to feature relevant portions, not saying too much, not saying too little, and that comes from having reviewed hundreds or thousands of pardon applications and their hearings in front of the board over the past 15 years. Another part of the pardon application is Section 4, which is tell us how you've lived your life and what you've done since the crime, and why are you a good candidate to have your record cleared. Again, I've reviewed hundreds and thousands of these, and I've listened to others, and saying the right reasons is important. And so that's another value that I add to my clientele. Once the documents are gathered and uploaded or photocopied, once the answers are reviewed and added to the pardon application, I can also answer questions about the fact that if you have letters of support from various family members or other community representatives or people that know you, they can be included in your pardon application. Once your pardon application is filed, then it starts a process that currently takes about 21 to 24 months to review. A separate section of this podcast will be why it takes so long. But for right now, we're still talking about pricing. So part of what I do is track your case. I'm in weekly contact with the staff at the Board of Pardons. You're going to be invited to do at least 2 interviews. One is an interview by a parole or a probation investigator who's going to go through the facts of the application with you and verify them, and also check on your current living situation. That happens about a year after the pardon is filed. And then you'll receive a letter or an email from the Board of Pardons telling you that you've been invited, hopefully, to do a public presentation. I talk to you and prep you for each of those interviews or presentations, and then usually we talk after they're done and I learn how they went. After the merit reviews of the Board of Pardons, you get to find out what the vote is. I always listen to the votes, and then we find out if you got 3 of the 5 votes, it goes to the governor with a recommendation that he give you a pardon. And then hopefully if you get the pardon a month or 2 later, you need an expungement. And that is going to be another topic that I want to cover, which is every pardon needs an expungement. The pardon is what gives you official permission to file an expungement on a misdemeanor or a felony conviction. So first the pardon, then the expungement. To wrap up transparent pricing, the basic fee for a single docket with a single record request from a single county is $1,850. I currently offer a $500 down payment plan as long as we get a card to hit for at least $200 a month every 30 days after that. And there is currently 1.5% interest charged on the outstanding balance. This video is being made as of December 13th, 2022. Pricing may change in the new year. The payment plan may change, the interest, the money down may change, but that's what we're charging now. Each additional docket that we have to write off to the clerk of courts for and create an additional explanation for results in a $200 upcharge. So somebody with 2 dockets would be quoted $2,050 with the same $500 down. Somebody with 3 dockets would end up being quoted $2,250 for the entire 2-year process. That would also be $500 down at some point, and this might not be surprising, but some of my clients who have 7 or 8 dockets and the quote gets up towards $3,000 or even more, I ask for more down money or a larger monthly payment. So that's the way the transparent pricing works, and you know the fee quote before you spend a penny. The pricing on an expungement is different. The expungements are filed after the pardon or for certain things that are not misdemeanor or felony convictions that can be expunged right away. The expungement process takes 3 to 4 months. It's filed in the county of conviction. The pricing for that varies a little bit from county to county, but we basically quote them at $859. Out of that, I pay a filing fee that ranges from $100 to $200 or more. I also request the Pennsylvania State Police records. So the expungement quote is a flat rate as well, averaging around $859. Another question I get frequently, and I believe actually I've done a previous podcast on this, is why it takes 2 years. I think what you need to understand is, first of all, there are lots of criminal records out there that people need to have cleared. There are literally millions of them. And so as people find out that it's possible to have these records removed, they want to get in line and fill out their pardon application or apply for it. Once those applications are filed, they go into a process where they are reviewed by the staff of the Board of Pardons, which includes members of the Department of Corrections, the Probation and Parole Department. All of the Board of Pardons staff starts researching and reviewing these records, uploading them online and preparing them for review. That's a lot of things to review. It's a lot of applications. It could be hundreds or thousands every year. When they're ready for review, they go in front of the Governor's Board of Pardons. That's the Lieutenant Governor, the Attorney General, representative of the Department of Corrections, Dr. Williams and a representative of the Victim Advocate Program. And those people are all very high-powered individuals in the system. They all have a lot to do on their plates, and they get together every month or two to try to review as many of these as they can that are investigated, teed up, and ready to review. As a result of that, they make their votes. Some people that either filed too soon or they know they don't have any positive things to say about the application, the applicant won't get the initial 2 votes that are needed out of the 5. If you don't get 2 votes out of the 5, the rules say that your application is denied. You can wait a year and ask again. It is not always apparent why they are denying applications. I can sometimes review a decision, and without knowing why they did it, I can give an experienced opinion as to why I think it might have been declined. But that is the first hurdle that needs to be reached. If the board gets together and reviews a couple of 100 applications, the ones that get 2 votes or more go forward, and then they are listed for a merit review. At the merit review, each of the applicants is given about a 5 to 10 minute period of time when they are allowed to either make a presentation or answer questions from the governor's board. Now, if you think about maybe 100 people that want to have a merit review and they are allowed or given 5 to 10 minutes per presentation in order to answer questions if the board has any, well, that's 100 times 5 is 500 minutes. Up to 10 minutes is 1,000 minutes. Divided by 60 minutes in an hour, it takes a lot of time for them to set up these Zoom meetings and have somebody log on and sit there and answer the questions about how they've lived their life and why they're a good candidate. Again, my job would be to prepare you for this interview before it happens, but this is also explaining why it's a 2-year process. If the board votes in favor of your application, then it goes to the governor. Well, the governor is basically the highest executive in Pennsylvania, and he receives hundreds or thousands of these, and he's also doing other things. And so usually the governor takes a month or 3 to review what the recommendations made to him, and then at some point he signs the bulk of them. They go forth, they're sent to you or your representative, and then don't forget, every pardon needs an expungement. So once you get the pardon, you need an expungement. That's why it takes about 2 years. Have they been getting any faster? The process has gotten longer. Originally, 2 decades ago, it was taking about 4 years. They've gotten faster than that. Also, remember, they do an expedited review in order to review marijuana-related cases in as little as a year instead of the usual 2 years. But the number of cases, even though the Board of Pardons has added staff members and is going online, as I talked about previously, they're using efficiencies to lead to more efficient review, but there's more applications coming in. And so when you average everything out, to me, it seems like they're taking about 2 years, plus or minus a few months. And that's why it takes 2 years to get an answer on a pardon. I'm now going to answer the question of why it takes 2 years to get a pardon, but I'm going to give you the short answer. The short answer is because there's a lot of people asking for them, there's a lot of documentation that's involved, there's a lot of state government employees that investigate these things and feed up the results of their investigation to 5 very powerful government people that need to review them, and they get together every month or 2 to review as many as they can. So by the time you take all of those factors and factor them in, it looks to me like it's taking about 24 months from beginning to end, give or take a few months. Also depends a little bit on the complexity of the case. If you have a very old marijuana misdemeanor, I think it's going to sail through in as little as a year. If you have an old complicated burglary, robbery, aggravated assault, that's going to take a year longer. That's the short answer. Now I want to do the short answer to a combination question of why is it so expensive to use PA pardon services or a lawyer's services, and also the equivalent question of should I file it myself? And the short answer is, if you know how to write off to the clerk of courts to request the specific documents that are needed for the Board of Pardons, go ahead. If you run into questions from the clerk of courts about whether do you want this, that, or the other thing, you need to answer those questions. Once you get the documents and once you get your pardon application and you need to answer the question of how did the crime occur, if you think you're perfectly comfortable just giving the answer of how the crime occurred without being too long or too short or too excusatory or not taking responsibility for it, but without saying too much, go ahead. And at the same time, for Section 4, all the good things that you've done with your life since the crime was committed, well, a lot of people struggle with not being able to volunteer, having trouble going to their son's high school, wanting to travel but not being able to. But how can you focus in on the specific answers of why you're a good candidate when it's the first time you've ever filled out a pardon application? If you're comfortable doing that, go ahead. After you file your pardon application and you get a call from an investigator to document the application and ask you some questions, if you know what he's going to say and you're comfortable with that, feel free. And then again, if you're given an invitation to do a merit review presentation to the board, knowing that you want to say just the right amount of information, not too much and not too little, be short and succinct, answer the question in a way that's advised by somebody that's reviewed or listened to hundreds or thousands of these. But if you're comfortable doing that yourself, go ahead. It's a completely free process and you can fill out your own application. And the worst that happens is if you don't get the 2 votes you need or the 3 votes, you get a denial and then you can ask again. It's probably a year or 2 after you started, but it is a completely free process. There's no requirement for you to use an attorney or anybody else. And so I say, have at it. So I want to review a list of what are going to be future podcast topics as I go forward with this transparency revamping of the website and the podcasting. And it has to do with a bunch of problems and complaints and negative impressions that my clients or people with criminal records have that hold them back from following through on this process. And I'm willing to discuss any and all of them because they're all valid. One of them is, why should I use a lawyer to help me with this process? It was a lawyer that got me into this. So it might not be a surprise, but defense attorneys might think they're doing a good job, but ultimately they end up giving you a recommendation to take a plea and getting a conviction that's probably been ruining your life. Whether the attorney lied to you, whether he did a good job or a bad job, all you know is there was a lawyer prosecuting you, there's a lawyer defending you, there's a lawyer on the bench judging you and giving you your sentence. And so far your experience with lawyers hasn't been really positive. I get it. I've been in the system 35 years. I've been a prosecuting attorney trying to do the right thing. I've been a defense attorney trying to do the right thing. I've never been a judge, don't want to. But now my practice is limited exclusively to helping people clear old criminal records through the use of pardons and expungements. And I can guarantee you that the free conversations, the free emails, and the advice that you will get will always be honest to the best of my ability, and any pricing that you receive for quoting for services is going to be transparent and it's going to be upfront and known ahead of time. Sort of in line with the last one, an awful lot of the reservations that people have about following through on a pardon or an expungement, or actually just reaching out to me, even though I'm a lawyer, is lawyers are just so much a part of the problem. I can't tell you how many times a week or a month I hear my lawyer lied to me. My lawyer didn't come to court. My lawyer set me up with a plea deal. My lawyer sold me out. My lawyer told me my record would never be cleared. All of which are wrong and bad. Lawyers are part of the problem. Bad lawyers are a big part of the problem. But the only thing that's going to clear a misdemeanor or felony conviction is a pardon. So find an honest pardon and expungement attorney that you can trust, and then follow through with the process if you're interested in clearing your record. Another question I get a lot is, this isn't guaranteed, so why should I pay you money or do it myself if it's not guaranteed? Where are the things that things can fail, where my pardon can go wrong? This is where actually I think my experience is particularly helpful, because if you just got off parole for a felony where you did 2 to 4 years upstate and you got out and you walked off your parole and you think you're going to file for a pardon and be forgiven by the governor's board, I'm going to advise against it. You can still file your own if you want, but one reason for failure is it's too soon. Well, what's too soon, Mark? Well, if you have an old marijuana misdemeanor, I think you can file for a pardon any time because marijuana cases are being expedited. The more serious your crime gets on the scale of severity, from summary offenses, misdemeanor offenses, slowly going up to felonies and felonies of the first degree, the more serious the crime, the more time that needs to go by. And if you have a felony, a burglary or something, you went into a house or a garage to steal stuff and sell it for drugs, that's serious. It's going to be at least a felony 2, could be a felony 1. But if that's getting 10 years old and you've done a really good job with your life and you have a good way of explaining what happened and when, I can review your answers and I think we can talk about when is a good time to file. The thing you have to understand about the pardon process is that there are no rules. You can file one whenever you want, but if you don't get the votes you need, then you're denied. Then you have to wait a year and you can ask again. But in general, every time you ask, you lose 2 years. So that's how a pardon can get denied. Another way a pardon can get denied is if your answers take the wrong tone. It seems to me the board is interested in you accepting responsibility for the crime when it happened, knowing how you got involved in it, and how you learned your lesson so that you learn from your involvement in the system. So that is what the board is looking to hear. I have looked at other answers that people have brought to me, and they frequently sound like, hey, I got this conviction because my lawyer was a bum, and now I went and got myself a bachelor's degree and I've done a really good job. I even volunteer at a local youth center. I'm entitled to this. Now give me my pardon. That's going to get denied, I think. It's just got the wrong tone. How do you know that? Unless you've reviewed hundreds of these, I don't know. Another way it could fail is because maybe you don't do a good enough job about talking about what you've done with your life since then. Because it might seem like a little thing to complete an associate's degree or to get fired from one job and then just keep at it until you get another kind of employment. And earn your driver's license privileges back and to just keep out there and set up a stable home. But all of those answers matter, and it's actually exactly what the Board of Pardons is looking for. How it is you have rehabilitated yourself and become a good citizen. Another item of skepticism that I hear about why people don't apply for a pardon is because they don't think it'll work. From the time somebody gets convicted, again by lawyers on either side of him, and then goes to meet a probation officer who isn't always warm and fuzzy, they never get a copy of their record. Nobody in the system is telling them what can be cleared and when. They will tell them to go out and get employment and get a job and start paying on their fines and costs, but nobody actually tells them when this can be cleared and why it is they should go out and get employment and stay on the straight and narrow for a period of time. I think that would be a really good thing for parole officers to do. Here's your record. When you're doing an interview, you can see what's on it. Explain it in short, sweet terms. Earn your money, go on a payment plan, and oh, by the way, this is when you can figure out you might be able to get your record cleared. I can't tell you how many times I hear that lawyers tell people, you can't get this off your record. And these attorneys are doing criminal defense and they're experienced professionals, but they don't file pardons and they don't file expungements, which are the only things that can clear your record. So sometimes people just don't think it'll work. It does work. It's the only thing that clears a record. I definitely need to have a title about, can I get my gun rights after my record is cleared? And so my answer, this is the short version, but my answer is, if the only thing keeping you from your gun rights is a Pennsylvania conviction, and if you are successful in getting a pardon from the governor for the misdemeanor or felony conviction that is giving you the problem, and then if that record is expunged, all of your rights that were taken away from that misdemeanor or felony conviction are returned to you as if it never happened. So that is, yes, your gun rights are restored. Little caveat off to the side: if you have convictions in another state that are affecting your rights, I'm not commenting on them. If you have a federal conviction affecting your rights, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Pennsylvania criminal convictions that are cleared with pardons and expungements and the restoration of your firearm privileges. I want to continue my short answers about value pricing or transparent pricing, because I did talk about the fact that we quote pardons at $18.50 and start for $500 down for the 2-year pardon process on a single docket. I also covered briefly the fact that we quote expungements at an average of $859. Those are priced according to each of the different counties that they get filed in. There are 67 of them in Pennsylvania, and they all have different filing fees. So in general, expungements are $859. I also wanted to mention that there is a fee for a Pennsylvania State Police criminal history record request. When is that quoted? Sometimes we can't find somebody's record. So if somebody doesn't know what's on their record and I can't find it on the UJS portal, it's because it might be a small misdemeanor that's over 10 years old, in which case there's a computer algorithm that comes through and hides it. It does not erase it. It is not expunged. It is hidden. The only way to unhide it is for us to ask the Pennsylvania State Police to give us a copy of the complete full access review criminal history. That's called an FAR. It's requested with the PSP 170 form. We charge $99 for that, out of which we pay the state police a fee for that. When we get the record, we scan it and send it to you. Then I can tell you what can be cleared and when, either a pardon or an expungement. We have a remaining service, which is, I call it record requester, because if people want to request their own court records, possibly to file their own pardons, or because they came to one of my workshops about how you file your own pardons, and they know that they have 2 dockets in Tioga County, they have to write to Tioga County Clerk of Courts to request 5 specific documents. It might be easier for them to pay us to do that for them than for them to look up the address, the records that are needed, who the clerk is, and the photocopying fees or the record requesting fees that are required. We have a flat rate of $79 per docket that we write off to get those records. So if somebody wants to file their own pardon, but they have 5 dockets from 5 different counties, I'll quote them $79 times 5. We'll request all those records, and when we get them, we'll upload them and give them to the applicant to use as they see fit. So I wanted to do a short answer and a long answer on every pardon needs an expungement, which is combined with sort of an update of the Board of Pardons and what's going on in December 2022. Also sort of ties in with my answers on other questions about why a pardon takes 2 years. So let's get into all that. The Pardon Board met and reviewed 2,679 applications in December of 2022. These were applications that were filed online during September, during the File Your Own Marijuana Misdemeanor month that Governor Wolf and Lieutenant Governor Fetterman created. In other words, in September, Pennsylvania people convicted of misdemeanor marijuana offenses could file their own pardon online, and it helped with the documentation. A lot of the requirements were waived. And out of 3,500, the board is merit reviewing 2,679. That makes me think that a substantial amount of them, maybe 2,000, maybe 2,500 pardons are going to be issued by the end of the year or very shortly into next year. Every pardon needs an expungement. Why? because a pardon is the official forgiveness that allows an expungement to be filed. An expungement is what actually issues from the Court of Common Pleas, ordering the Pennsylvania State Police to clear a criminal history, but an expungement cannot be filed on a misdemeanor or a felony conviction until it has been pardoned. So, if thousands of pardons are issued at the end of the year or whenever, every pardon needs an expungement. Might not surprise you that I can give advice or file expungements in every county in Pennsylvania. In addition to that, the 2679 that they're reviewing, they're also doing more merit reviews December 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. That's a lot of merit reviews. There's literally dozens or hundreds of people that are having their pardon applications reviewed that were previously filed that have nothing to do with the September marijuana misdemeanor pardons. These are people that have been in the pipeline for a year or two that are just coming up for their merit review in the due course of things. So that's going to be several dozen, hundred more pardons. A couple of things to take away from this is, number one, Pennsylvania is streamlining the pardon process. Pennsylvania is serious about removing criminal records and helping people get back to their full employment, housing, and education. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get your record cleared. It's still going to be personally reviewed, thoroughly reviewed, and investigated. But I'm saying that this is not one of those states that only grants 3 pardons a year. So that's important information. Every pardon needs an expungement. That's the takeaway. We covered why.